Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. My psycho sister just texted me. She's coming to my birthday party. Hey sis, long time no see. Got to town yesterday. I'll be there for your birthday party. Hugs and kisses. Anna, I burned my damn eggs reading that message. It popped up from an unknown number while I was cooking, and I just stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, smoke rising from the pan. I hadn't heard from Anna in 3 years. I sat at the table for a while, poking at my breakfast and trying to figure out what to say. My husband came in, already dressed for work. "How's the birthday, girl?" he asked, kissing my cheek. I didn't answer, just showed him the message. He shrugged. "Maybe it's time you two work things out, babe." "It's not that simple," I said. I never told him the full story between her and me. He thought it was just the usual sibling drama. But Anna and I, we had full-on wars. Back when we were teens, Anna once cut my hair while I was sleeping because she noticed my curls had grown longer than hers. She couldn't stand me having anything she didn't. How does she even know about the party? I asked. She still lives back in my hometown. He swore he didn't tell her. Maybe someone on the guest list did. He offered. He then gave me another kiss and headed out to start his long commute into the city. Eventually, I replied to her message. I thanked her, probably more politely than I felt, and said it would be nice to have her here. Then I asked if she needed my address. A few minutes later, she texted back, but completely ignored the question. "I'll be a little late to the party, but I'll make it in time for the cake." I just stared at the screen, reread it a few times. All I could think about was that moment years ago, waking up and seeing her by my bed, my hair in her hand, and her whisper in my ear. Behind me, like always, I dropped my son off at school and headed to a store to buy drinks and snacks for the party, which was happening at my house. While I'm at it, I start bombing the guests with texts, asking if they know Anna. Every single one of them says no, which makes sense. She lives 300 miles away and is part of a past I've gone out of my way to keep hidden from everyone. I also text my husband again, double-checking that this isn't some kind of surprise he planned for today or anything like that. He denies it and gets annoyed at how persistent I'm being. He doesn't get what it was like for me, always behind Anna, with her obsessive, controlling personality. Especially in high school, she made it her mission to turn my life into hell. I was the artsy, socially awkward kid. She was a textbook mean girl. Popular, gorgeous, cruel. I had no idea what to expect from her now, and I needed some kind of clue. Calling my parents was out of question, but then I remembered Greg. He used to be our neighbor, and one of the very few friends I had back then. I still had him on Facebook. I sent him a DM, and he quickly replied with his phone number. I called, and he was happy to hear from me and catch up. Back then, he was the only openly gay kid at our school, and he went through a lot. We bonded over being outsiders. He still lived in the same house, inherited from his parents. I asked him what he knew about my sister, and his tone changed right away. "You don't know?" He sounded hesitant. "She moved back into your parents' house, right next door. I've seen her on the street a couple times. She looked thin and kind of rough after rehab. Not like the queen bee from senior year anymore." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "And what about her husband? That lawyer?" Anna had married one of the most powerful attorneys in the state a few years back, in a wedding so big it even made the papers. My parents, always the suck-ups, were proud beyond words. They split a few months ago. Not on good terms, from what I heard. Rumor is he was cheating left and right. And poor Anna got way too unstable. Hooked on meds, just trying to cope with it. I went quiet, trying to process all that. Greg sounded like he had more to say. He started to, but stopped like he wasn't sure if he should. I pushed him. Just say it. The weird thing is, he finally said, that ex-husband, the lawyer, died last week. The papers didn't give much detail. Just said it was gruesome. Straight nightmare fuel. Local gossip says it might have been some mob-related death. But there were also rumors the cops were looking into your sister. Another bad memory hit me while I was setting out the plates and arranging the chairs ready for the party. I remembered a birthday when I was 11 or 12, and Anna, angry that the special day was mine, pushed the cake off the table onto the floor. I lunged at her, furious, and my parents held me back, protecting her like always. They promised it had been an accident and made Anna apologize. But the next morning on the school bus, she leaned in close and whispered that same phrase in my ear. Behind me, like always, when the first guests started arriving at 6, they found me barely put together and hard to talk to. I was too anxious, waiting for the moment she'd ring the doorbell. I made an excuse and went to my room, decided to call my parents. Only they could tell me more about how Anna was doing mentally. I hated calling those two, but I did it anyway and got no answer. I tried a few more times and still nothing. It was strange. My father, a bitter old retiree, never left the house and practically lived in that chair by the phone, watching whatever game was on TV. I called Greg again and asked if he'd heard anything about my parents. He said they were still there, living the same way as always. I asked if he could check whether the lights were on at their house. He said yes, but he was just finishing making his dinner and would call me back once he went over. I thanked him and went back to the party. Most of the guests had already arrived. Friends hugged me, handed me gifts, and enjoyed the playlist I had carefully built over the week. The only one missing was my husband, who because of the long commute would arrive a bit later, but not before stopping at the bakery we had hired to pick up the cake. I texted him, asking if he was on his way yet. I managed to relax a little, had a glass of wine, and started to enjoy the conversation. I even forgot about Anna for a few minutes until I saw Greg's name flash on my phone. I went to my room to answer. No one's coming to the door when I knock, Greg said. He was standing outside my parents' house. Could they be out? I don't think so. The living room lights are on, and your dad's truck is in the driveway. That's weird. Can you look to the window? The curtains are shut. I can't see anything. What about the door? They used to leave it unlocked sometimes. I don't know if I should. I could hear him hesitate, probably wondering if it was okay to go into a house uninvited. But I'll try. I heard the sound of a doorknob turning. It was unlocked. For a few seconds, I only heard footsteps in Greg, calling out for my parents in a loud voice. Then a sound I hadn't heard from him before. A scream of pure horror. What happened? I asked, gripping the phone. My God. What's there, Greg? Your parents are... There's blood. Blood everywhere. What do you mean, Greg? My anxiety was about to explode. I need to hang up. Sorry, I have to call the police now. I'll call you back. I heard another, my God, before the call suddenly ended. I tried calling him back several times, but the line was busy. Then a heavy knock on my bedroom door made me jump in shock. Someone left the cake at the door. A friend's voice said on the other side, "Do you want us to put it in the fridge?" I was confused. I stood up and opened the door, asking what she meant. My husband was supposed to bring the cake, and he would never just leave it at the door. Someone left the bakery box on the front mat and went away. The friend said, watching my pale, frozen face. I rushed across the living room in panic. The other guests, who had been laughing a moment ago, now sensed that something was terribly wrong. The front door was already open and, just as they said, the bakery's cake box was there. I walked up slowly. As I touched the ribbon, a red puddle began to form beneath the medium-sized box. I didn't need to open the whole thing to see my husband's hair inside it. My left hand flew to my mouth, like holding a scream. The right hand still held my phone, which buzzed suddenly. It was a text message from that number. From Anna, behind me like always. Story 2. The truth is in the pudding. They say the proof is in the pudding. They don't know how right they are. It's been almost 60 years since that fateful day. I was a lad of 6 years old, and I had received my first ever pudding cup. I remember the delicate, creamy texture and the rich chocolate flavor coating my tongue. Above all, I remember the voice, sweet as nectar and soft as silk. It called out to me from the chasm carved by my plastic spoon, so deep and dark, seemingly stretching beyond the bottom of the cup itself. Truth is in the pudding. And in that moment, it burned upon my mind a purpose, one that I could recall perfectly at every waking hour of every day, yet one I could not share, for it was my task alone, the key to my salvation. In the coming decades, I devoted myself to the study of the confectionery arts. I knew I had to perfect my craft, to hone my skills to the level that I could complete my task. I sacrificed my worldly ties, rejected love and the company of family in favor of pursuing my ultimate goal. I traveled the world, seeking knowledge of every pudding I could, studied under the pudding masters, never letting anyone know my true intentions. After a lifetime of study and search, just when I begun to believe that all my labors would be for naught, I finally found it, the key to my lifelong obsession. On the night of my final victory, I sat before my prize, the complete confectionery works of Pudzizu, greatest of all custardmancers, bound and penned on the finest pudding skin, written in the darkest fudge. I threw the book open and flipped to the page number etched into my psyche. There upon the tapioca parchment was the recipe that I knew would be there, a pudding to tear open reality and deliver me unto the Brûlée Plains, where great Pudzizu resides, my rightful home in existence. With fervor, I rolled up the sleeves of my robes and began my craft. I started by adding the typical milk, sugar, cornstarch, and butter to create the base of their pudding. Next, I threw into the pot the myriads of exotic specimens that I cultivated throughout my years of travel. Yorkshire eyes, diabetic essence, 3 coconut souls, and the heart of one of the elusive banana men, to name a few. Finally, I added the last piece of the recipe to the pot, 2 cups of my own blood. Blood, pudding. I mused to myself, overflowed with anticipation, as I set the pudding over fire. As it reached a boil, I threw back my head and shouted the words inscribed in Pudzizu's book, Akvar GRNPNG, and threw myself head first into the pot. I felt my whole body sink into the bottomless of pudding, and as my skin burned in the molten sugar, darkness took me. I awoke on my back naked and covered in burns, staring up at a clear, ochre sky. As I righted myself, I heard the distinctive sound of cracking like that of glass. Looking down, I saw I sat upon a glossy, dark brown layer of burnt sugar, sticky to the touch. It cracked gently under my weight, revealing a light yellow custard below the surface, yet held true and allowed my feet to find purchase upon it. Taking in my surrounding, I found myself near the base of a large flat plateau, perhaps 500 feet tall, with several others dotting the distant horizon, silhouetted by a setting chocolate sun. A cry of pure ecstasy escaped my lips. I had done it. I had finally made it to the Brûlée Plains. My life's work had finally paid off. The sound of squelching caught my attention, and I turned back to the flat plateau behind me. A vertical split was forming along the side of it, reaching about halfway up the plateau. From the split a form emerged, large, smooth, and caramel in composition, with 2 long eye stalks protruding from its front and a pair of shorter tentacles beneath. My breath caught in my throat, and I dropped to my knees in reverence, the ground sinking a few inches from the sudden drop. What I had thought was a plateau was in fact a flan snail, one of the great creatures spoken of in the texts of the earliest custardmancers. Thought to be but legend, its eye stalks gazed down at me for what felt like eons, until it finally opened its mouth. From the yonic opening, a tongue of the darkest molten fudge descended towards me, stopping but a few inches away. Slowly it took on the vague shape of an upper body, and I could make out a latticework of pulsating red and blue veins within its ever-changing folds. From the head, a pair of glassy eyeballs bubbled to the surface, along with a set of several large, misshapen teeth. The eyes of the creature fixed on me, and its teeth began to move in a facsimile of speech, but no sound was produced. Instead, I heard its words echo within my mind. I am Pudzizu, greatest of "Oh," the voice said, and I realized its sweet whisper was not unfamiliar to me. "Great Puzuzu," I said, tears of joy welling in my eyes. "I heard your instructions. I have made it here to you. I have completed my task." Puzuzu regarded me for a moment, their unblinking eyes staring into my soul. "No," they said, "not yet." Without another word, they reached out and grabbed me by my arms, their fudgy flesh flowing over and searing my own. Slowly, the flan snail began to retract its tongue back into its mouth, and I was lifted into the air. As we approached the entrance to the great beast's maw, Puzuzu's head stretched and swayed for a moment before it latched itself onto my open eyes. I screamed as pain overtook me, a feeling as though my nerves had been set aflame. Then all sensation ceased. I awoke with a start on my kitchen floor and was overcome with a wave of anger and sadness. What of my place among the Brûlée Plains? What of my decades of work? Had I not sacrificed everything to complete my task? It was then that I began to notice the change. My body felt supple and smooth, too much so for one of my age. I sat up and looked toward my cooking pot. In its reflection, I saw the gelatinous mass of pale yellow I had become, a singular eye protruding from the custard. Pulsating veins peeked out from the ever-shifting surface of my new body. I had achieved my salvation. I felt purpose once again flood my mind. A new task. No, my true task. To create an even greater pudding. One to rival the work of even great Puzuzu. I rose from the ground, extending my glorious new form upwards. Soon all shall be saved. Soon all will know that the truth is in the pudding. Story 3. The warehouse I work at won't tell us what's in containers. Now I know why. I needed a job as I could barely afford rent. I just walked out of a bar job mid-shift a few days before. My landlord mentioned he knew a place that was hiring. He was a strange guy, to say the least, but he seemed sincere. "So you can get me something that starts straight away?" I asked. "Yeah, they'll take you on pretty quick. They're always getting new people. You know how to drive a forklift, though? Right, kid?" he said. I didn't, but I was desperate. I thought, how hard can it be? Yeah, I can drive one. Is this a warehouse job, then? Is it nearby? I asked. Yeah, it's not too far from us. I'll give them a call and let them know they got some fresh meat. He waddled off, and I went back into my apartment. Well, that was easy, I said out loud. I was pretty happy. I just got a job. I decided to celebrate and asked my friends if they want to go out to bars tonight. The next day, my landlord knocked on my door at 5 a.m. I had only gotten home a couple hours prior. I opened the door in my underwear. "Yeah, what's up?" I muttered, my mouth still dehydrated, dry as desert sand. "You start today, kid. Get dressed and head down there. Here's the address." I wrote it on a piece of paper. He commanded in a deadly serious tone. Before I had a chance to speak, he handed me the note and stormed off. He had scribbled the address on a torn piece of a dirty magazine. Didn't surprise me at all. I got dressed and grabbed a bus to the nearest stop to the address he gave me. It was in a shady part of town. A really, really shady part of town. I'd actually avoided going this way my entire time living here. First time for everything, I suppose. I came to the address, and it was a warehouse. It looked old and abandoned. I banged on the door, and to my surprise, it opened swiftly. A tall, dark, handsome man in a designer suit stood before me. "Charlie? Charlie, isn't it? Your friend has told us you can fill in the forklift position. You're right on time." "2. Come on in, son," the man said. "Yeah, that's me." I followed him inside and saw the warehouse. It was awfully clean. Too clean. I could practically see my reflection in the floor. I could see multiple cleaners scrubbing various areas of the small warehouse. They were wearing full hazmat-looking suits. It looked like something out of Chernobyl. He guided me to the forklift and stared at me. "Here you go," he said in a joyful manner. Do I not need to, sign any paperwork or anything?" Don't I need a high vis or something too? I said with a shaky voice. I was terrible at faking anything. Nope, we trust you. You're all good to go, he said with a big grin. This forklift, it's kind of different to what I'm used to. Is there a manual or something? I said with a tremor in my voice. There was no way I could pull this off. Different? This is a standard model. I wonder what you're used to then. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I was so embarrassed and actually kind of scared too. Before I could spew any more BS, he grabbed a worker walking by. Dean, show Charlie here how we use the forklifts. He's not used to this model. The man, my new boss now, walked off in a hurry. Dean, my new co-worker, spent the next 30 minutes showing me how to use the forklift. He could tell I'd never touched one in my life, but didn't seem to care. Dean was an odd-looking guy, straightforward and nice enough, but definitely a dark horse. His face was covered in scars. They looked like cat scratches. He was missing an ear and an eye, but didn't bother wearing an eye patch. His head was shaven, and he had a long red beard that hadn't seen a wash or trim in years. I was surprised how easily I took to the job. They had a few positions: drivers who unloaded the trucks, drivers who put away the containers, drivers who then took containers to the trucks that were leaving, and drivers who loaded the trucks that were leaving. To start me off, they put me on taking containers from the unloaded trucks and putting containers away. The containers were about 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide, like a really small elevator. They were a thick iron, not like regular wooden crates. They had an opening door on them which looked heavily padlocked. As I was moving the containers in the forklift, well, just about doing so without crashing, I could hear rumbling and thudding inside the containers. Whatever was in there was moving. I saw the man from earlier walking around and waved at him to get his attention. He walked over and said, "How's it going, son?" "It's good, thanks." What the heck is in these containers? I'm worried I'm going to drop them if whatever's in there keeps rocking about. I hope I'm not breaking anything, I said to him. Part of your paperless verbal contract is to respect our client's confidentiality. We don't open the containers. Each and every container has a unique barcode. We simply receive shipment, store the containers for a short amount of time, and ship them back out, he said in a stern yet friendly tone. Oh, okay, all right then. About my contract, how much does this job pay? And what are my hours? I asked nervously. Your hours are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You will also be paid £333 a day at the end of each shift in cash, he said with that same grin. Oh, okay, thanks. I'll get back to work now. I said to him, £333 a day? That's so much money. I'm going to be rich doing this job. What a weird amount, though. In cash? Who pays in cash? 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. is going to be brutal, though, I thought to myself. I had stopped paying attention to the container on my forklift, and as I tried to move it up higher to fit on the stack, my finger slipped and I pressed the wrong button by mistake. The prongs of the forklift shuddered, and the container came crashing down. As part of the container burst open, I heard a quick, excruciating scream, and then nothing. The scream came from inside the container. The entire team stopped what they were doing and rushed over. The cleaners immediately began spraying and cleaning up the container like flies swarming a corpse. As I looked around, panicking like crazy, I looked back to the container. There was blood pooling by the now busted container door. A security guard grabbed me by my throat and pulled me out of the forklift. He shoved me to the ground and put a knee on my head, holding me down in place. The tall man in the designer's suit rushed over to me and told the security guard everything was all right for now. It's okay, son. Accidents happen. It's only your first day. How about we take a lunch break while the team sorts out this little accident? What the hell is in there? I screamed. The rest of the warehouse looked at me like I just pulled out a grenade. Now, what did I say about that, Charlie? He said to me in a calm yet concerned tone. I thought it was just weapons or something in there. That was blood. Why is there blood in there? Are those animals in there? I cried. He didn't answer my questions. The security guard picked me up to my feet and escorted me to a break room. The room was small. It had a few chairs around a table in the middle of the room. There were some children's toys in the corner of the room. They looked out of place. I guess the boss brings his kid to work sometimes. We had a long talk. Well, I didn't really say anything. He told me how lucky I am to have this opportunity and that they're doing a good thing here. He preached about company values and client satisfaction. He said to me that he actually appreciated how interested I am in the work and that there may be another position within the organization I can fulfill. He said that actually, since my little accident, a slot's just been open for a brand new exciting opportunity. I'm in the break room now. He's gone, but says he'll be back soon and show me what the inside of the container's like. To put my mind at ease, I guess this new job isn't so bad after all. My landlord, Mr. Graves, is a great guy for getting me this job. I'll let you know how I get on. Story 4. The doll's grandma left behind. I never thought I would come back to Grandma's house. Not after she died, not after the nightmare started. But here I am, sifting through dusty furniture and faded photographs, try to make sense of the life she left behind. The air smells like mothballs and old carpet, the kind of smell that sticks to your lungs and refuses to leave. As I move through the living room, a memory hits me, sharp and unwelcome. I am 6 years old again, small and terrified, my grandmother's sharp voice echoing as she shoves me into closet. She said it was for my own good, that I needed to learn patience or manners or something. But I knew better. Inside that closet, I would sit with the doll, the one she kept propped in the corner. Life-size porcelain face, eyes too wide, too real. I swore it would move when I blinked, a hand shifting slightly, a head tilting just enough to catch me watching. I told myself it was just my imagination, but my 6-year-old self knew. I laughed nervously to myself and walked down the narrow hallway toward the old guest bedroom. The closet is still there. The door looks the same, scuffed at the bottom, the little brass knob tarnished with age. My heart starts beating faster. I reach for the handle. Inside it is dark. The shape is unmistakable. The doll. My stomach drops. It is standing there, just like I remember, staring at me with that impossible, patient smile. I take a step forward. My hand brushes the doorframe. The closet door swings shut behind me. I try to pull it open. It will not budge. The darkness presses in, thicker than the air outside. My breath comes in shallow, ragged gasps. Then I hear it, a faint creak, like the doll is shifting, turning its head. I am trapped, and suddenly, I realize I never left the closet in the first place. My fingernails scrape against the old wood as I yank at the knob. For a 6-second, I am sure it is not going to open, that I am going to die in this closet with the thing I have feared since I was a kid. Then, with a groan, the door finally gives way, and I stumble backward into the bedroom. The doll falls forward, its porcelain limbs clattering against the floorboards. It is not smiling anymore. The once patient face is twisted, jaw open just enough to show faintly carved teeth. Its painted eyes narrowed into an expression I can only describe as rage. The lips, cracked with age, look like they are about to split open and scream. I did not wait to find out. I bolt. I am halfway down the hall before I realize I am running toward the kitchen. The smell of old spice racks and stale coffee hits me, a smell I have not known in decades. My heart is hammering so hard it feels like the walls are shaking with it. And then I see it, on the counter, between a stack of yellow newspapers and an unplugged toaster, sits a toy I have not seen in 30 years. A thick, hollow plastic Pillsbury Doughboy. Its tiny hands frozen in a mock wave, that stupid little chef's hat perched on its head. My knees go weak. Suddenly I am 7 again. I can hear it, even now. The soft pitter-patter of plastic feet running across the linoleum at night. The giggle, that high-pitched hoo-hoo echoing from the dark kitchen while everyone else slept. I used to tell my grandma about it, and she would slap me for making up stories. But it was not a story. I remember it. A sound breaks me out of the memory. A thud from outside. Heavy, like something hitting the wall just under the kitchen window. I spin, yanking the curtain aside. Nothing. just a dead yard and the skeletal remains of her rose bushes. When I turned back, the doughboy's head is gone. It is sitting next to the toy's body on the counter, separated cleanly as if someone had popped it off like a bottle cap, and the tiny, hollow body is still standing perfectly upright. I needed to get out of the kitchen, out of the house, but something inside me said do not run. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was Grandma's voice, the one I still sometimes heard in my sleep. I forced myself back into the living room, trying to ignore the noise of my own heartbeat. The smell of dust and mothballs clung to everything. I grabbed a cardboard box from the pile near the sofa and started tossing her knickknacks into it just to keep my hands busy. China teacups, a cracked snow globe, a dozen little figurines she kept on a shelf I was never allowed to touch. As I wrapped each piece in yellowed newspaper, another memory bubbled up. Grandma sitting in her chair late at night, chain smoking with the lights off except for the glow of the TV. She would tell me things back then, half lullabies, half warnings. I know how to tie my spirit to an object, she said once, her voice low and rasping. When I pass, I can stay in this realm, watch over you, protect you from the evil world. I thought she was just scaring me, or try to make herself sound magical. She even showed me once. She pressed a hand against one of her little trinkets, a porcelain cat, a silver thimble, and whispered something under her breath. I did not understand the words. She said the items were her eyes, her hands. Now, packing up these same knickknacks, I noticed something. The items are warm, not just warm from the house, warm like skin. I drop one into the box, and it rattles against the others. I swear I hear something shift in the next room, like a chair being dragged across the floor. Grandma always said she would never leave me alone. She said she would be here when the world turned ugly. And all at once it hits me, maybe she was not lying. I freeze as I hear it. The soft gurgle of a percolator bubbling in the kitchen. The smell hits me, thick and red, almost black, curling to the stale air like it never left. I step toward the sound, every muscle in my body screaming not to, and push open the kitchen door. The sight almost stops my heart. The doll is sitting in one of the kitchen chairs, its face still twisted with anger, jaw set, eyes burning like coals. The Pillsbury doughboy sits on the table, headless, but now its hollow little face mirrors the same rage, like it learned from the doll. And there she is, my grandmother, smoke curling from the end of her cigarette like a wisp of something unreal, leaning against the counter as if she never left. She pours coffee into 2 mugs, hands steady and calm, completely normal, except everything around her is not. Her shadow stretches across the floor and the walls. At first it mimics her movements, then it does not. It slithers and lingers, separating from her form, twisting as if watching me, alive in a way she is not. "Stop pissing your pants, James," she says, voice low and amused, the smoke curling around her like a halo. "Come have some coffee with me." The smell is intoxicating, warm, familiar, almost sweet in its thickness, but the color makes my stomach twist. My heart pounds, but against all reason, against all fear, something in me steps forward. Her eyes meet mine. They're the same eyes I remember, soft, knowing, but there is something else there now, something patient, watching, waiting, and for the first time, I realize she has not left me. She never really left. Story 5. I babysat for $500 cash. I'll never do it again. I almost didn't take the job. Something about the ad felt off. Looking for a responsible sitter. 1 night only. Good pay. Cash. Must follow instructions. That was it. No details about the kid. No address. Nothing about the hours. Just a burner Gmail account to reply to. I was broke enough to overlook all that. My rent was due in 3 days, and my fridge was down to half a jar of pickles and an expired yogurt. So I sent a message, figuring I wouldn't get a reply. I got one back in less than an hour. "Thank you for reaching out. The job is simple. Watch our son, Matthew, from 7 p.m. midnight. $500 cash. Please do not let him look into mirrors. Please do not answer the door if someone knocks and claims to be us. Address attached. I stared at the screen, rereading the message. No mirrors. Don't open the door. Those weren't instructions. Those were warnings. But again, $500. $500 for 5 hours of sitting on a couch while a kid sleeps? I could ignore the creepiness for that. The house was out in the suburbs, tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac with no street lights. Every house on the street was dark except theirs, a faint yellow glow behind heavy curtains. The parents greeted me at the door. They looked normal, almost aggressively normal, like the kind of people you'd see in stock photos. Mom in a cardigan, Dad in khakis, both smiling too wide. "We're so glad you could make it," the mom said, "Usher me inside." Matthew's upstairs, already in his room. I nodded, clutching my backpack strap. "Any allergies? Bedtime routine?" The dad cut me off. "The instructions in the email are the most important. Don't let him near mirrors. Don't answer the door." "Right," I said, trying to sound casual. "Can I ask why?" The mom's smile faltered for half a second, but she recovered fast. "Just follow them. We'll be back at midnight." $500 cash, like we promised. Before I could press further, they slipped out the door. The lock clicked. The house felt wrong once they left. Too quiet. Not the cozy, suburban quiet where you can hear the hum of a fridge or a distant dog bark. This was sterile, like the silence in an empty hospital wing. I wandered through the downstairs. Every reflective surface was either missing or covered. The bathroom mirror gone. The TV screen draped with sheet. Even the glass in the picture frames replaced with paper. The air prickled against my skin. I checked on the kid. Matthew was sitting cross-legged on his bed, staring at me when I opened the door. He looked about 8. Blonde hair, pale skin, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm your babysitter." He didn't answer, just blinked at me slowly, then asked, "Do you know which ones are real?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The people," he said. His voice was flat, like he was reciting something. "Sometimes they're not them. Sometimes they're copies." I laughed nervously. That's creepy. Where'd you hear that?" He tilted his head, bird-like, from the other Matthew. I swallowed. "The other Matthew?" He pointed toward the darkened window. "He comes when the glass is open." I pulled the curtains shut tighter. The first knock came around 8:30. 3 slow raps on the front door. I froze on the couch, my phone in hand. The instructions screamed in my head. "Don't answer the door." Another knock, louder this time. "Hey!" A man's voice called, muffled to the wood. "It's us. We forgot something inside." The parents. My pulse thudded in my ears. It sounded like the dad, but flatter, like someone replaying a recording through a bad speaker. I crept closer, careful not to touch the knob. "We just need to come in for a second," the voice said. Behind me, I heard movement on the stairs. Matthew was standing halfway down, clutching the railing, staring at the door with wide eyes. "That's not them," he whispered. The knocking stopped. The hours dragged. Every time I thought the house was quiet again, something else happened. 9:15. I heard footsteps pacing the upstairs hallway. Heavy, deliberate, except Matthew was sitting on the floor next to me, coloring with broken crayons. 9:47. The TV, even with the sheet over it, flickered to life with static. I yanked the plug from the wall. It kept flickering for a full 10 seconds before finally going black. 10:22. Another knock. This time the mom's voice. "Please, he's dangerous. Let us in before it's too late." Matthew started crying, covering his ears. I didn't open the door. At 11 o'clock, I heard whispering, not from the door this time, from upstairs. I crept up, leaving Matthew on the couch with my phone flashlight. The whispers grew louder as I reached his bedroom. The door was cracked open. Inside, the moonlight from the window illuminated a figure sitting on the bed. Matthew, except I'd left him downstairs. This Matthew looked identical but wrong. The way a wax figure almost looks real until you see the eyes. His lips moved, whispering to himself, words I couldn't quite make out. Then he snapped his head toward me. I slammed the door shut and bolted down the stairs. The real Matthew was exactly where I'd left him. He looked up at me with tears streaking his face. "You saw him," he said. I didn't answer. 11:40. The knocking came again. Both voices this time. The mom and dad in perfect unison. "Let US in." The door rattled like they were trying to break it down. Matthew was shaking, curled against me on the couch. "Don't," he begged. "If you let them in, they'll take you instead." The pounding grew violent, with splintering. I dragged Matthew with me into the kitchen, searching for a back exit. That's when I noticed the one uncovered reflective surface left in the house. The oven door. And in it I saw myself. Except my reflection wasn't moving the same way I was. I staggered back, nearly dropping Matthew. The other me smiled, wide and wrong. Teeth too many for a human mouth. The reflection pressed its palm against the glass from the inside. A hairline crack snaked across the oven door. Midnight couldn't come fast enough. I huddled in the kitchen with Matthew, the pounding from the front door shaking the walls, the whispering upstairs turning into full-on giggles, and my reflection grinning from the oven, cracks spiderwebbing wider with every second. I thought I was going to break. Then the noise stopped, all at once. The clock on the microwave blinked 12 a.m. The front door swung open. The parents walked in, smiling normal again. "You did well," the mom said. She handed me an envelope of cash. My hand shook as I took it. What the hell is wrong with this house? With him. I pointed at Matthew, who clung to my leg. The dad crouched down, prying a boy off me. "He's not our son," he said simply. My mouth went dry. "What?" "We lost Matthew years ago," the mom said. "But things still come through, things that look like him, things that look like us. We can't get rid of them, only contain them." They each took one of Matthew's hands. He didn't fight, just looked back at me with hollow eyes. "You did your job," the dad said. "You kept him from escaping. That's all we needed." And before I could say a word, they led him upstairs. The door slammed shut behind them. I stumbled outside, clutching the envelope, the night air biting my lungs. When I got home, I dumped the cash onto my kitchen table. Every bill was crisp, perfect, except when I flipped them over. The faces weren't a president's. They were of me, smiling, too wide, with too many teeth. Story 6. The footage. We moved to the country for peace. At least, that's what I thought. The house was old. 2 stories. White paint flaking off its sides like dried skin. The porch sagged. A single wind chime clinked even when there was no wind. Behind it, 30 feet of yard, and then the woods, a wall of bark and shadow that swallowed the sun by afternoon. May said it was nice and quiet. She was a writer. She ate shit like this up. It started with a fox. Late October. The leaves were bone dry, and the sky looked peeled open. May spotted it near the tree line. Limping, narrow as a branch, eyes hollow. The next night, she left out food scraps. "Just in case she's hungry," May said, batting her baby blues at me. Just this once. This quickly became a daily ritual. By November, she bought bulk dog food and stored it in a plastic container with a blue snap-tight lid. Except she was always too busy to take it out herself. So it became my responsibility. Every night, I carry it out to this rotten stump and leave it with the lid off. By morning, something had knocked it over and picked it clean. Routine. Until the container started disappearing. I would walk out and find the lid and nothing else. At first, it was rare. We would scratch our heads, and May would buy another one. We joked about it. Raccoons, coyotes, a starving skinwalker. But the more consistently it happened, the more annoyed May became. Her eyes lingered sometimes. On those woods. I want to know, she said. I gotta know. Why? I was standing behind her while she worked on her laptop, fingers firing away at keys. I can't focus, May said, unless I figure this out. Whatever floats your boat. She bought a trail camera. Cheap, night vision, motion detection. She insisted it would pay for itself in satisfaction. The first night we set it up, she asked me to seal the lid. If it's shut, the thing will have to fumble it open. That'll guarantee the camera picks it up. I didn't like her referring to it as a thing. Animal. I corrected as she adjusted the angle of the camera. Whatever. I carried it out, clicked the lid shut, and left it there like bait. The next morning it was gone, and the camera was facing the sky. What? May stormed out into the yard. What happened? Maybe an owl hit it, I suggested. No, she snapped, fidgeting with her phone. I'm checking the footage. I made coffee while May fast-forwarded through hours of footage on her phone. It just turns. She shouted from the living room. Over the course of an hour, it slowly turns up. I glanced out the kitchen window, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'll buy another one. Are you? My voice faltered. Through the window, I saw it. The container was there on the edge of the woods. A twisted and broken piece of plastic. It wasn't there a moment ago. Something was out there. May, I said, maybe we should stop putting food out. Silence. I looked over my shoulder into the living room. May was on the couch, staring at her phone. Her expression was blank. May. May straightened and looked up. What are you talking about? The container is out there. Huh. She hurried into the kitchen when I didn't answer, spotting the container. When did I get there? She ran from the kitchen, appearing in the backyard a moment later. She ran across the open, ponytail bouncing. I stared, something twisting in my stomach. It was out there. The thing. She slowed to a stop, kneeling over the container. She picked it up and waved it in the air. Come back, I whispered. Hurry up. Behind May, the trees rustled. She stood and ran back to the house, mango container in hand. Later that day, she went shopping. She came home with a new container and an extra camera. This camera was more expensive. She didn't tell me the specs of it. I'll set it up so they're within view of each other, she said. That way, whatever moved it last time can't do it again without being seen. That night, May put the food out herself. I sat on the couch, staring at the mangled container on the coffee table. It looked like it had been twisted until it simply came apart. When May came inside, she looked content. I miss the city, I said as she joined me on the couch. The city is for pussies, May said, kicking the mangled container. It's too expensive. My gaze lingered on the container. What do you think did that? I think it's wolves. I peeled my eyes off the container and gawked at her. Wolves? May, you're joking. Nope. I think there are wolf people out there. They must be struggling to find game if they're scrounging for dog food in people's backyards. She devolved into laughter as she said it. I wasn't even smiling. May's brown eyes lit up. Come on, she said, taking my hand. You want to sit out here and stew about torn up plastic, or do you want to have sex? I let her lead me to the bedroom, but I couldn't get it out of my head. Were May's eyes always brown? The next morning, May was gone when I woke up. I found her in the backyard, standing over an empty container. May! I lingered in the doorway, watching her. She didn't look up. What's wrong? May's head rose slowly, facing the woods. Her mouth was moving. Her hair shifted in a soft breeze. The trees danced before her. I stepped further out, squinting in the fresh daylight. Where are you going? May popped out of the house behind me, holding her phone. I jumped, whirling on her. May! But I looked back to the woods, finding nothing but an empty food container. It's empty, May said. I already checked. Let's see the footage. May! I said, injecting as much steel into my voice as I could manage. I just saw you outside. Where have you been? May cocked an eyebrow at me. I've been on the couch for 10 minutes, she said. I literally watched you zombie walk to the door and stand there slack-jawed like an idiot. I stared at her. Was I half asleep? No. I knew what I saw. Maybe it was someone who happened to look like May, wearing the exact same outfit. Come on, May groaned. I want to see the footage. You coming or what? I stiffly followed her to the couch as she pulled up the camera app on her phone. We watched the first camera's footage first. The video started ordinarily. A possum, wind moving branches. Then at 2:43 a.m. the screen glitched. A splice, like something had stitched itself into the feed. Tall and thin, arms that ended in stumps. Its body was static, as if the footage was being burned where he stood. Where its head should have been, there was a fan, a wide, spiraling crest of human eyes, each moving on its own. Some bloodshot, some glassy, some wet and oozing pus. Then, one by one, they turned. Each eye settled on the camera. They stared. We stared. Neither of us spoke. One of the eyes grew closer, the pupils splitting apart as it filled up the camera. It was familiar to me. I couldn't place how. Then the feed cut out. A crack zipped across May's phone. She yelped and dropped it. I couldn't speak. May was grinning. What was she grinning about? May! We found it, she said. I got it on video. May, what the fuck are you talking about? It saw me. It saw us. Don't you understand? I stood slowly, backing away from her. May barked a laugh, raising both hands to her face. My blood ran cold. Now it'll know. It'll see us wherever we are. We'll always be seen. There was a knock on the door, and I screamed. May laughed again. I looked from her to the door, trying to keep my breathing steady. Another knock. A shadow moved across the curtained window. Come on, May said. This is what I've been waiting for. We've been out here for months. Finally. May, are you serious right now? Shut up. The good part's happening. I was trembling where I stood. The shadow returned the window, tall and shifting. The part that should be its head split, spreading out like a fan. Another knock. The door rattled. May stood and approached the window. Don't you want to know? She asked, peeling the curtain back. Aren't you curious? I closed my eyes. I couldn't tell you why I did it. It was just a reflex, like a child flinching when a parent shouts. Silence. A strange warmth. Glass shattered. When I opened my eyes, May was gone, and a food container sat on the floor by the window. Inside, it was a single blue eye staring up at me. Story 7. I woke up to someone breathing in my closet. I never thought I would have a story like this, but it is still so vivid that I cannot shake it. This happened about a year ago when I was living alone in a small apartment. I usually keep my doors locked and my phone within reach, so I felt safe until that night. It was around 2 in the morning, and I had just fallen asleep after a long shift. My bedroom is small with a bed pushed against the wall and a closet on the opposite side. I usually sleep light, but I thought I was completely out. Then I heard it, slow and deliberate breathing coming from the closet. At first I convinced myself it was a half-awake dream, maybe snoring or imagining things. But the sound continued soft, steady, and deliberate. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, but I was too terrified to move. The breathing got louder, almost as if whoever or whatever was in there knew I could hear them now. I tried to convince myself it was a rodent or maybe the wind, but the breathing was not random or quick. It was measured and patient, like someone was watching me. My mind raced as I reached for my phone on the nightstand. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it on the floor. I tried to calm myself and slowly inched my eyes toward the closet. The door was slightly open. Not much, maybe just an inch, but enough to let a shadow stretch into the room. I could feel my blood running cold. I wanted to run, but I could not. I remembered the baseball bat under my bed. My body moved almost automatically, reaching for it while keeping my eyes locked on the closet. I gripped the bat and whispered, "Hello?" My voice barely made a sound. The breathing stopped for a second, then started again, louder this time, like a warning. I realized whoever was must have known I noticed them. Panic hit me fully, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, flinging the closet door open. It was empty. My clothes were hanging normally, and nothing was out of place. I checked behind the curtains, under the bed, and even in the bathroom. Nothing. No footprints, and no signs of anyone ever being there. My heart was still racing, and my hands were shaking so badly I could not hold the bat properly. I stayed up the rest of the night, with every light in the apartment on. I even called a friend to stay on the phone with me until sunrise. I never found out who or what was there. I changed the locks the next day, installed a new security chain, and started keeping a knife on my nightstand. Every night since I checked the closet before turning off the lights, and I never sleep with my bedroom door open. The scariest part is not just that something was in my closet. I know I was not dreaming. I could still feel the presence for a few seconds after I turned on the lights, like a shadow lingering in the corner. I cannot explain it, and I do not want to try. The thought that it could happen again haunts me every night. Sometimes when I hear a small noise in the apartment, I swear I hear that same slow, deliberate breathing. Story 8. My aunt recorded people's last moments, and I have no idea why. My aunt was a strange person in many normal ways. She wasn't eccentric per se, but had specific ways of living her life that obtained a unique focus. Diana lived her whole life alone in a well-kept home, isolated in the woods, from which she drove exactly 21.5 miles to an elder care home where she worked. She was also completely and utterly obsessed with death. I know it's normal to think about death. For most of my early adulthood, I had a near obsessive fixation on it myself. I would often lie at night, trying to fall asleep when the idea of my eventual oblivion struck me, startling me back to an existential terror that would put off rest for another hour until my mind had calmed down and settled back into rest. I would visit graveyards, somewhere I had no relatives or friends, just to passively experience that rest so that I could accept it more easily. It never helped. But my aunt's fixation was more extreme in proximity and reaction. My episodes could be calmed down, my mind distracted. But Diana lived around death, according to my family. Her father died while she was still in our grandma's womb, and then she grew up around several failed pregnancies before my mother was born, which made our grandmother even more stressed and unstable. Diana was 15 by the time my mother entered the picture, which, according to Mom, further isolated them. When my mother was only 2, Grandma had a heart attack in front of her and her sister. Diana stood stiff as a board, unable to do a thing. My grandmother grew paler and paler, writhing on the ground as if she were a deer struck by a truck. Diana stood there, frozen in a motionless, tear-streaked panic until her shock faded and 911 was finally called. But it was far too late for the doctors to do anything. My mother only really remembers staring up at Diana, shaking slightly, her eyes bloodshot in terror. By the time my mom had memories, her sister had gone off to college, then medical school, then finally into elder care, to only be seen again on holidays and funerals, more consistently appearing at the latter. The main time my mother ever saw Diana was when she was crying profusely at the funeral of every single friend or loved one in our small town. Without failure, Diana would show up well-dressed and outwardly grieving, and be allowed to enter and sob profusely throughout the whole funeral, leaving just before final prayers were done, never be seen or talked to until the next one. According to those who saw her driving away, her eyes were still waterfalls coursing down her pale face. The families would often only know her by association with my father or mother, and she would have rarely even met the person to whom she was pouring her grief out. My mother guessed Diana was so afraid of death that she attempted a harsh form of exposure therapy, and my father, who had only met her at a single Christmas party, guessed she loved the attention and environment of grief. It was a strange, transitory relationship that I had with my aunt, made up of vague memories of Thanksgivings, Christmases, and those dreadful days where we all had to dress in black. She always stood at the edge of whatever gathering we were at, So odd that even we kids noticed it. My cousins joked that she was scared of everything. Couldn't stand to even look people in the eye. I tell you all of this to try to give context to what happened last week. My Aunt Diana had passed away, apparently from some sort of heart condition, and left her home and everything within to me, someone who's spoken to her, perhaps twice. I was so taken aback, as was my mom, dad, and sisters. My sisters joked she left her home to me because I was the one she hated the least, due to them pranking her with a whoopee cushion one Christmas. But I was strangely unnerved. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like a fly taking a first step on a spider's web rather than a simple notary. I wasn't able to head out to my aunt's place until last Monday due to my work. Pediatrics is hard to get covered. She moved away from our hometown and into the mountains to a cluster of isolated communities in the Appalachians to pursue her dream of being an elder care specialist. Her own home was part of a rural sort of neighborhood, houses separated by patches of woods, but still close enough to be within walking distance of other houses. I was surprised by how great it was, how plain. I briefly wondered if it would be worth it just to hire someone to go through my aunt's stuff, but my paycheck disagreed. I would have to catalog what was left of my aunt's life myself. Getting inside, the interior matched the exterior in dreariness. The living room only had a couch, a glass table in front of it, and an old analog TV sitting on a shelf. But on the walls, there were a myriad of paintings. Some were those old medieval depictions of Black Death. Others were depictions of hell. And others were just strange depictions of skulls, skeletons, and angels descending upon dying men as saviors. And by on the walls, I mean they were covered head to toe in these paintings. A screen door broke up the paintings, leading into the backyard and further beyond the woods. Creeped out, I moved on to a hallway leading out to the left, which led to all of the other rooms of the home. The first door I opened nearly made me scream, as when I did. But what little light bled in from the living room, I saw what seemed to be a dog, sitting up in the middle of the room. My panicked hand searched the wall and flicked on the light switch, revealing a golden retriever sitting frozen in place, its eyes trained on the door with its mouth hanging open. My heartbeat began to slow as I thought the dog must be some sort of statue, but looking at the rest of the room, I realized it was taxidermy. Ducks, owls, deer heads, raccoons, armadillos, all manner of creatures sit posed on shelves or on trophy racks. There was even a bear head above the window that showed the nearby woods. Bending down to look at the platform the golden was sitting on, there was a small plaque that read, "Benny, beloved companion, even while gone, you bring smiles." Surrounding the plague were a series of Polaroids of a young Diana freshly moved into her house, which appeared far less dreary in the idealic filter. Sat beside her was a yellow ball of fluff with two black pimpered eyes. The rest of the photos showed them around the house, Benny slowly getting older and older until he appeared as he did now, only the slightest hint of graying around his otherwise bright, sunny muzzle. Close to Benny, I could almost sense the slightest heat coming off his perfect fur. Feeling creeped out by Benny and the deer statue, both of which I felt like were staring at me, I backed out of the room and closed the door. The next room seemed to be a sort of library, which, at a brief glance, seemed to cover a variety of topics. Apocalypse, afterlives, underworlds, deals with death, definitions of life and soul. Like the paintings, the walls were covered head to toe in these books that dealt with every religion, philosophy, and esoteric thought. Some real old-looking ones were stored in individual glass cases, with a box of gloves next to them. Most of them were unmarked with no title on the front, except one. It seemed far older than the others, gray, nearly crumpled pages making up its insides. A plaque beneath it read, "Copy of the Voynich manuscript, recreated beautifully by Dr. Svald." Leaving the library, I felt less creeped out than when I left the taxidermy room. The next room down the hall had a strange door frame, bending 3/4 up each side, and made out of somewhat rather than the gray walls that surrounded the rest of the house. I laughed, joking to myself that she had a whole coffin put in her home. Opening the door, I was surprised to see I was correct. It was a wooden coffin, plain, bare planks inside. The only thing of note was the shelves installed in the coffin, containing around 30 VHS tapes, with the other shelves containing DVDs and a camera seemingly capable of making recordings on VHS. Immediately, my interest was piqued, but I decided to clear the rest of the house. The next room down the hallway was the bedroom, which itself was mostly plain, besides a heart monitor and a fluid system like you would see at a hospital. Next to the bed, on the nightstands, there were old family photos of Diana and her mom, a couple of her in her home smiling at the camera. It was like I was staring at half-remembered ghosts, these people who resemble nothing of what they are now. There was also a bathroom, only available through the bedroom. The final room down that hall was the creepiest. The first thing I noticed was an angled roof, as if it were supposed to mimic a cellar. Little flowers, ceramic angels, and stars dotted the ceiling. On the floor, there were various blankets, making the floor uneven. In the corner, with a little mobile hanging right above it, was a crib. A single baby doll sat in it, a pillow over its face. I barely got a step into that room before I backed out. The only other rooms of note were the kitchen and the laundry room, their openings sitting opposite the hallway that led to the rest of the house. However, no weird stuff in those rooms. But it was remarkably clean, no dishes left to clean or put up. The whole house felt so strangely neat and undisturbed, with only a tiny layer of dust on everything. The emptiness felt fresh. I had decided to stay at the house for a few days to go through her stuff, see about getting something done with her home, and finally go to a funeral which had, apparently, already been arranged. I decided to start with those VHS tapes in the coffin closet. Only 2 of them were marked, wrapped with a single red tape. I decided to go top to bottom and just get to those odd tapes when I got to them. I put it into the old VCR in the living room and plopped on the couch, eating some of the fast food I had picked up on the way over. My body was aching from moving my stuff in, and I mainly wanted to see if these were maybe work-related or yet another strange hobby of hers. The tape begins winding inside the machine, the screen coming to life, only to open up to more darkness. In the ambient buzz of the recording, I heard what I thought was strange, almost hiccuping breathing. But after getting a little closer to the TV, I realized it was sobbing. I had heard it a couple times before from the corners of churches and funeral homes. The camera peeked around the corner, revealing a bedroom you'd see in an elderly home. Cheap bed, nightstand with flowers, and a foldable feeding table attached to the bed. An old woman lay on her back, her mouth agape. There are these awful gasping sounds, like she was using her whole chest to squeeze her lungs, just to get any oxygen in her. The sobbing got close to the microphone, and I realized that whoever was recording this must be in the closet of the old woman's room, a coat rack becoming visible in the moonlight as the camera pushed the closet door open more. The old woman continued to make those awful gasping noises for another 30 or so seconds, at which point I had dropped my food and was pressed against the back of the couch, trying to get away from the screen. Then she stopped. The sobbing intensified for another minute, until I heard a high-pitched electronic whine. The old woman's chest, which had seemingly decompressed and become empty, filled again. She took no breath in, but her mouth began to move with an alien, puppet-like movement. It is so dark and wet. I pull my hand away from the walls, and it feels like stone snakeskin. I hear a great rumble through the depths, like a snake digging in the dirt. The old woman's chest collapses, and then fills up once more. I can hear the rough crackling of bone as her ribs reform into place. I claw at the end of a tunnel, knee-deep in liquid. I hear it from the way I came. It wants me to dig. I am so afraid. Can anyone hear me? The corpse's chest collapses for the last time. The person holding the camera gasps quietly, pauses for a moment, and then begins sobbing again, this time far more violently. This went on for another 10 or 20 seconds, and then the tape ended. The words burned into my mind like a tattoo, horrid scars on my mind. I was shocked into terror then, and I am still shaken. Was this some near-death experience? The words were so clear, so awfully clear as they rasped out her dead throat. I had to simply sit there for maybe 10 minutes, trying to collect myself and bring my heartbeat back down. The house now felt both far more empty and far less so. The woods outside painted in moonlit black beyond the living room's lights becoming far more oppressive. I could almost twist the branches into crooked figures, lingering, watching my terror. I nervously retrieved the tape and returned to the coffin closet, the plastic feeling cold under the skin. I couldn't help but feel the hairs on my neck stand up as I went past Benny's room. I decided against further exploring my aunt's haunting and potentially criminal videos and decided to sleep, making sure to lock all the doors and try to cover as many windows with curtains or even blankets. Thankfully, her bathroom is actually quite nice. The warm, consistent current kept the thoughts of death away for at least a little bit. Wrapped in that soft embrace of water, I closed my eyes for a second and was struck with sudden, explosive sensation. Someone was in the bathroom with me. At least I felt it. I peeked around the curtain, seeing nothing in the steamy room. Yet the feeling persisted. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My spine was electric with the sensation. I tried to finish bathing, but I rushed through and got out quickly, standing in front of the sink, brushing my teeth as quickly as I could. The damp rug underneath me felt like millions of tiny centipede legs under my feet. I kept looking around, trying to dispel whatever paranoia had taken me. Then I smelled the briefest scent of mud and decomposition, that miasma of meat beginning to rot. I had a mental image of my aunt freshly clawed out of his own grave, floating invisibly in the bathroom, her chest rising and collapsing like the old woman. When I turned around suddenly, tried to grasp an invisible presence, I happened to look down at the mat I stood on. There were two impressions, slightly caked in mud, right behind my feet. I've been shaking in bed since that moment. Try to look at hotels nearby, but there aren't any, and I have no friends nearby either. For now, I am simply trying to get some logic into what I've seen and what happened. Maybe I tracked mud and moved and scared myself into thinking there was a ghost. Maybe the tapes were some sort of weird film my aunt was making, or some near-death lucidity, or maybe my aunt edited these. I don't know, but despite how fearful I am, I want to find out. There's something my aunt left behind to be solved, and my strange connection with her pushes me onwards. I know it's weird, but I feel like I have a connection to her and what may have happened. I'll update in the morning if anything else happens. Story 9. I joined a health tech startup to make a difference. But that isn't what we were creating. I signed the offer at 2 a.m., laptop teetering on the counter, ramen steam blurring the screen. My apartment was a shrine to junk and half-finished projects, but I had a job now, a tech startup in Silicon Valley promising a product that would change how people sleep. I believed it. I wanted to believe it. They called it the RES band, the REM enhancement and sleep tracking rest band. The concept was pretty straightforward. A soft and lightweight headband that you could wear comfortably during sleep, designed to improve sleep quality using gentle neural stimulation and light vibrations. It tracked brain waves and even manipulated them, enhancing your sleep by using gamma wave entrainment. To explain it simply, tiny sensors delivered light, non-invasive pulses that stimulated the brain and synced with the sleeper's natural cycle. Those pulses would entrain the brain to maintain or increase gamma activity, promoting better sleep. It felt genius. We were writing code that would touch strangers' brains while they slept. I went to work every day believing that I was making a difference. People who suffer from insomnia would feel well rested. Waking up groggy would be over. People could go about their mornings without having brain fog. I was excited to be working on something meaningful. On top of this, we had an added perk. Everyone working at the company had a prototype of the RES band they could use. After all, we had to have real data points to continue to develop and innovate. Then some random night, I was at home on my laptop, working on the latest API to integrate into the new hardware, when I felt a tinge of curiosity. RESTBand's backend was notorious for being off limits to most employees. Hell, everything important was cordoned off. Cloud servers, encrypted drives, corporate partitions. We heard the phrase, security first, over and over again. But since I was working on the latest API, I was granted with root access. I was itching to poke around. I just want to take a tiny peek. Nerds do that on the regular, right? Most of what I saw was pretty useless. Log files, Error reports, half-developed code packages with cute little developer nicknames like sheep_counter and SW33T_ star34M5. It was like I was rummaging through a closet of junk. I knew I wasn't supposed to be in there. My credentials only allowed me access so I could test the API. But as the night wore on, I found my way further into the system. I kept telling myself that what I was doing was harmless. I wasn't stealing anything, breaking anything, or changing anything. I wanted to see how it all worked. I was pretty disappointed that I hadn't come across anything noteworthy. But then I started seeing folders with tags like restricted internal use only, no obvious functions or purpose, just locked doors with vague names. I should have logged off. But every coder or computer geek knows that itch. Locked door, open it. It took me a while, but I wrote a custom script that tricked the server into believing that I had read/write access to files. I was finally into the gold mines of how RES band worked. But it wasn't a gold mine. I had opened a vault that was sealed off for a reason. The folder opened. There were files everywhere. Graphs, reports, PDFs, a flood of data that meant nothing. Then I hover my cursor on something that stuck out to me. AG_009, Rec 07-10. A description flag popped up underneath it. Leverage potential, high. Pressure rating, 8.77. What the fuck did that mean? Leverage potential, pressure rating. That didn't have anything to do with sleep, and surely not with health or wellness. My hand was quivering on top of my mouse, sweat dripping onto the plastic. Against my better judgment, I clicked. It took a moment, and a window opened up and began playing a video. It was choppy and the quality wasn't great, but good enough to see what was going on and hear audio. I saw a dimly lit room on my screen, with a soft, warm light coming from the corner. A woman stood in the doorway, her hands running through a man's hair. Their mouths suddenly pressed together, with fierce and intense passion, like a storm erupting out of nowhere. I was frozen in my desk chair. This wasn't a scene from a movie or TV show. The way she clawed at his back, the hitch in her breathing, the lustful determination from the man. It was intimate in a way beyond acting, a moment between lovers that wasn't meant to be seen. I could see the glint of her wedding band under the light, and I was able to see her face. My stomach turned over. It was one of my co-workers, a teammate. In fact, it was the woman who had given me a tour on my first day of work. The same woman who laughed at my bad jokes and worked so hard to make me feel welcome. I fell backward in my chair with a jolt of disbelief. I felt nauseous. This wasn't just anyone. It was someone I worked with. My chest was tight, and I felt a heaviness in my body. How the hell had this video made its way on to a company server? Were they surveilling her? Why would they want to have this? I closed the viewer and started scrolling further for answers. It seemed like hours, and I finally found a folder that seemed important. I opened it up and saw rows of files. One in particular seemed to stand out. Executive_insight_report_022.pdf. I swallowed hard and began reading. The first paragraph hit me like a wave of suffocating panic, pressing the air from my lungs. RES band devices are capable of accessing episodic memory fragments during REM sleep, using unique proprietary neural reconstruction algorithms. These fragments are able to be reformatted into full, third-person viewable sequences. Holy shit, viewable sequences? Of people's memories? My mind was swirling in all directions as I read each line. RES band could take every detail, every secret, every moment, and reconstruct it into a video that could be watched. Then it hit me. I had been wearing my prototype for weeks. I backed out of the PDF and started scrolling. Jesus fucking Christ. There was a string of files all starting with the same letters. SF, my initials. I clicked on the first file, SF_001, Rec 06-28. The viewer opened and video began to play. I recognized it instantly. I was standing in a parking lot, rain pouring down in sheets. In the corner of the video, there was text, estimated timestamp, April 11th, 2021, 2 a.m. The angle of the video was elevated, like it had been filmed by a ghost hovering in midair. I already knew what was going to happen, but I watched it anyway. I was shoving someone into the back seat of my car. My arms flailed up and down in a frenzy, and my breath spilled out in pale clouds that twisted and vanished into the cold night air. The person beneath me, a young man, was struggling. He was a blur of movement, and I could hear desperation in his cries. The quality of the video was slightly distorted, but it was clearly me in the foreground. Clear enough for anyone who saw it to believe it. I remembered that night differently. It was a fight, an argument I didn't want, chaos that I hadn't asked for. The kind of thing you eventually convince yourself was just a bad moment. And here it was on a screen playing in front of me. I felt sick. Then I heard the words I already knew. You tell anyone, and I mean anyone about this, and I'll fuck your life up. My stomach was in knots. Nobody knew about this. But there it was, recorded and cataloged on screen with a description in the corner. Leverage potential. Very high. Pressure rating. 9.82. Fuck. I understood now. I understood everything. RES span wasn't promoting health and wellness, or helping you get restorative night's sleep. It was reaching into the dark corners of your mind and pulling out what you buried and handing it back to someone else like a loaded gun. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. File after file, each one more damning than the last. Dozens of reconstructions from employees and investors using the prototypes. Whisper confessions behind closed doors, unreported crimes, affairs no one knew about. Each clip was precise, invasive, and devastating. Private moments, indulgences, betrayals, all meticulously cataloged, waiting to be used. This was a weapon. I knew I had to do something. I had to stop this thing from doing more damage than it had already done. Sure, I did something I wasn't proud of, but everyone has skeletons in their closets. People make mistakes. You learn from them. You shouldn't be punished for them. Even though that was a terrible moment in my life, I had made amends. In my own way, my dream of working in Silicon Valley had become a real-life nightmare, and I knew I had to use my skills to do something. I realized the simple truth of what I had seen. This existed, and it was made to be used. It was created to destroy lives. My plan wasn't clever. It was really just panic dressed up into lines of code. But I had to be surgical. I had to break this thing before it became a weapon that could be unleashed on the masses, or at least slow it down. So I started. I made a patch, a blunt instrument masquerading as a maintenance script, changing the logic of the operating system, rebalancing parameters, rewriting system indices. On the outside, harmless. Inside, designed for one thing, setting back years of research and development. What really mattered is how and where I would deploy it. So I waited until now. Tonight, there's a routine update that our ops team rolls out every month. A schedule refresh and firmware update to the existing architecture that runs RES Band. Now I won't pretend like I'm being a hero. If you think they aren't prepared for something like this, you're wrong. I'm not saving the world. I'm simply buying time. But I am smart, and maybe that is their true blind spot. They keep recruiting good people, the kind you shouldn't try to exploit. I don't know how well this will work. I may succeed, I may fail. Hell, I might end up in a shallow grave somewhere in California before this is all over with. But let this be the warning. They never wanted to come out. If someday you ever see RES Band or anything like on a shelf, if you ever think about buying one for a better night's sleep, don't. It promises sweet dreams, but harvests real-life nightmares. Story 10. I thought the voice keeping me awake at night was in my head. It's not. For the past week, my nights have been terribly wrong and painful. I don't know where to start. It's like the air in the room has quite literally turned against me. It began small, say little whispers I wrote off as my brain misfiring at the edge of hypnagogic sleep. Everybody's heard those voices once in a while. It started as a sound that sort of shaped itself into my name, like a plea to stay awake or a confused pronunciation of language. Then I'd feel this slow, creeping, almost freezing chill. like the blanket over me wasn't enough anymore. I felt I was sinking in a bed of ice-cold water. My body felt brittle. The voice. I first thought it was stress or some form of insomnia. Last night proved that what I was hearing wasn't just in my head. I had just laid down from a tiring day. I shut the lights to my room and kept the door slightly ajar. I slowly began to sink into bed. The second my eyelids dropped, a voice slipped in like it had been waiting all this while. It was low, calm, not even trying to be scary. "Stay awake," it said. Then, almost gently, "just don't look behind you." I grew disoriented. "Don't look up." It followed later, like an intimate whisper in my ear. I shuddered, almost nervously, like a wet voice had spoken in my ear. I kept my eyes shut, fearing I'd see something if I'd open them. "Open your eyes," the voice chanted. "Open your eyes," it demanded. It repeated the phrase like a mantra. Curiosity got the better of me, and I slowly slid them open, fearing the worst. Instead, I saw nothing. Nothing, but just a slight curve of something, like the crown of a head, leaning into my field of vision, watching me from above. Where it come from? My heart beat faster. I froze in place. I didn't see its whole face, but if I had rolled my eyes upward, it would certainly be visible. As the realization of something terrible seeping into my room hit me, the light snapped on, almost blinding me. The curved crown of the dark head was now clearly visible, and I didn't dare to look back to its face. The figure's frame felt like it was shaking in excitement. I gulped. The voice returned. "Get up, close the lights." I heard a slight chuckle as it died from my ears. I didn't move at first. My body screamed to stay put in bed. But the longer I resisted, the heavier the air got, like it was pressing me into the mattress. I finally pushed myself up, not turning, and approached the switch. With every step I took, I heard someone else's footsteps falling exactly in sync with mine, like a second pair of feet shadowing me. I flicked the lights off, shuffled backwards to bed. The footsteps met mine in a horridly well-placed rhythm. The second I shut my eyes, it started again. The same game, the lights on, the voice coaxing me up, growing intentfully menacing and cruel each time. Footsteps pacing me in a dance. Over and over. I was too scared to look back at the entity I felt was following me so closely. I feared it had snapped my neck should I have turned. "Get up," chuckle. "Close the lights. Don't sleep. Kill the lights. Kill the lights. Don't look back. No, don't look back." My eyes were bloodshot, burning raw like they'd bleed out. A curtain of red began to lint above my eye bags. The game stopped, as if the voice now knew of mercy. I lay stiff, unable to sleep, willing myself to ignore the slight, growing bulge at the edge of my vision. The shape above me started to change. The voice wanted to show me its face as it slowly creeped into my vision. A long, sickly dry, gray face in the dark. Its eyes two snow-pale orbs, blinking slowly, almost mechanically in the dark, glowing white like a husky's eyes catching headlights. Fixed on me, a mouth stick painfully shut with what seemed like wire in the dark. I felt terribly cold. My body spiked so violently I thought my veins would burst. My arms and legs went rigid, my frame locked, and all I could move were my eyes. Fear gnawed at my chest. I tried looking away, but the cold eyes wanted to meet mine. As I grew paralyzed, I began to lose my breath. My skin grew pale as if it was freezing, also cracking into bloody blisters, erupting all over. My heart skipped several beats. My jaw grew stiff. I couldn't physically fight its influence, so I did the only thing I could: stare back. That's when it shrieked, or better yet, screamed. It wasn't human, not even animal. The sound was so sharp and layered it felt like it was shredding my nerves. My ears began to bleed. My vision grew red. As I forced myself to stare into its cold eyes, the creature began to coil like a monstrous, darkly tentacled serpent. My bedroom door slammed open as if the scream itself had blown it apart. The longer I stared, the louder it shrieked, until, in one impossible flicker, its large, wiry shape shot past me. like a blur of black cold wind, and the door slammed shut again. Silence followed. My stiff body broke out from its stasis, the blood slowly chugging through my body. I grew warm. My head felt terribly dizzy. I haven't slept since. My body is begging me to. My head keeps nodding forward. My eyes keep rolling shut. But every time I feel myself slipping into a daze, I hear it breathe against my ear,